Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. We are on Jude week 6, anticipating that this will be the second to the last week. Next week we'll probably finish up Jude. And just to give you a heads up, I'm really contemplating doing an in-depth study on the book of Genesis, which will bring us to a lot of different places. I'm excited about it. So let me give you a little bit in the news. Right before we went on today, two things happened that I think are noteworthy. This one is Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds under fire over satanic idol and an altar on display at Iowa State Capitol at Christmas time. How ridiculous. But the Church of Satan, the Satanic Church of Satan, has put this display up. They have a Baphomet, that's from the Satanic Temple, I should say, and basically they have a wreath, a holiday wreath over Baphomet, which is a symbol of Satan. And there's, of course, a lot of protests, especially since you can't put a nativity or 10 commandments. And one of the caveats of this is one of the congressmen is complaining and saying that it has to come out because the Constitution of Iowa thanks the Supreme God for his blessings. And so they're saying it goes against their Constitution, and I think that's the way they can get it. One other thing that's pretty noteworthy, about a half hour ago, the Congress voted for impeachment inquiry. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be impeached, Biden impeachment inquiry. It means now they can open up and ask things and materials from the White House that they were dragging their feet on for this inquiry. So I think they needed 218 votes. They got 221. So that inquiry is going forward, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that from news as you go along. All right, let me give you some other news that's here this week. This one I have let's get under New World Order. And look at this. This is Google. They're introducing a new AI called Gemini. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. It's launched Gemini, which is a new artificial intelligence platform in a system, AI, that can seemingly understand and talk intelligently about almost any kind of prompt: pictures, text, speech, music, computer code, and much more. So you could show it a picture, and it could talk to you and elaborate on that picture and go anywhere it wants to go. It's just a step beyond being able to handle texts or images as previous ones have. It's clear that AI systems are rapidly advancing. They're getting way out of hand. And tonight I'm going to give you a little bit of prediction, which I've said before, but I'm going to make it really concrete tonight. They are heading towards an ability to handle more and more complex inputs and outputs. AI systems are highly dependent on the kind of training data, I'll put that in parentheses, that they have access to. They are exposed to this data to help them improve at what they do, including making inferences such as recognizing a face in a picture or writing an essay. You can show them this Gemini, you can show it a face in a crowd, and it will tell you who that is, and to give you all the, that's pretty scary. Google's new Gemini system has shown that it can understand real-time content such as live video and human speech. They also, depending on the data they have, they also can identify their person, from just listening to their voice. You may say, how is that possible? They have tapped into all kinds of things, including your phone. AI will be able to observe, discuss, and act upon occurrences in the real world. The most obvious example of this is with self-driving cars, which already collect enormous amounts of data as they're driving on our roads. In the home, motion sensors, voice assistants, and security cameras are already used to detect activity and pick up on our habits. Other smart appliances are appearing on the market all the time. The understanding of habits will get much more advanced with this AI system. It means that AI can both infer activities in the home and even predict what will happen in the future. Heard me right. As AI's knowledge of the real world gets even more comprehensive, it will act as a companion in all instances of life. At the grocer's, you could discuss the best and most economic ingredients for a meal you're planning with your AI. At work, AI will be able to remind you of the names and interests of clients in a face-to-face meeting and suggest the best way to secure their businesses. When on a trip in a foreign country, it'll be able to maintain an ongoing conversation about local tourist attractions, while the AI keeps an eye on any potential dangerous situations it might encounter. It will be your guide. And so obviously the convenience of this seems like it's going to enhance your life, but the drawbacks are pretty ominous. The future will be even greater and potentially more dangerous as AI gets to know and support us in every aspect of our everyday life. If given a chance, the industry will continue to expand its data collection into all aspects of life, even offline ones. When AI expands its capabilities into the next frontier, the real world, only our imagination will limit its possibilities. The Bible describes a time in the future when an image of the Antichrist is given life to speak on his behalf. This has been a challenging passage for scholars to try to understand. I believe, until now. While we can only speculate as to what type of technology John saw when being revealed almost 2,000 years ago, obviously he didn't know the word computer or AI, he called it a beast. The advances of AI technology may be progressing to where an all-powerful world leader incorporates AI in some fashion and allows them to present a worldwide in an attempt to copy God's omnipresence through AI technology in real time. Imagine AI technology in the hands of a dictator like a Hitler, and you can only imagine the power at his fingertips to control the population. He could use AI to assist in his ruling and making sure all mankind follows his policies, including the requirements that in order to buy or sell, one must accept his mark. That will also allow for greater monitoring and control of what we can and can't buy. Okay, now I want you to listen really well, and I want you to get this because I did a little bit more research and I found something very, very interesting. When ChatGPT, you remember me telling you about ChatGPT, you could tell it, hey, you could be a pastor and tell it, I want a sermon on love, and it'll write you a perfect sermon on love with quotes from Spurgeon and anybody else. It'll be better than anything you can come up with. They can do anything on any subject. So when ChatGPT was introduced in 2022, a Christian researcher, I found out, asked the bot to write an article on how an AI like ChatGPT could potentially fulfill the image of the beast prophecy in Revelation 13. What an ironic way to approach the subject. Here's what the ChatGPT's answer was, and I am quoting from this ChatGPT. It's a little lengthy, but let me read it to you. The image of the beast as described in the book of Revelation is a symbol of the end times, representing a powerful manipulative force that deceives and control people. Remember, this is AI writing this. In today's world, chatbots and other artificial intelligence programs are becoming increasingly prevalent and sophisticated, raising the question of whether they could potentially fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast. It's setting you up to answer the question. And it goes on to say this. One way in which chatbots could potentially fulfill this prophecy, notice it doesn't say they can't, is through their ability to manipulate and deceive people. Chatbots are designed to mimic human conversation and can be programmed to present themselves as real people, leading some people to form emotional connections with them. This can be particularly dangerous in cases where chatbots are used to impersonate real people or organizations in order to scam or manipulate individuals. That's already happening. I had one of my family members, as a joke, send me Elon Musk talking about my website. Elon Musk said, in his own words, his face, said, you need to look at Mark Correll's website. I found that it's fascinating and you're going to love it. It wasn't him, it was a chat box. So listen, it goes on to say this. Another way in which chatbots could fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast is through their potential to control people's actions and behaviors. Chatbots can be programmed to persuade and influence people's decisions, and as they become more advanced, they may be able to anticipate and manipulate people's thoughts and behaviors in increasingly sophisticated ways. Finally, it says, chatbots could potentially fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast through their ability to access and analyze vast amounts of personal data. Many chatbots are connected to the internet, have access to a wide range of data sources, including social media profiles, online search histories, and much, much more. This data can be used to create detailed profiles of individuals and to predict and influence their actions and their behaviors. Wow, what it's saying is this ChatGPT is saying, yes, we could fulfill the image of the beast. Let me make it very clear. They will fulfill the image of the beast. I believe the image of the beast will be an AI. We didn't have any type of knowledge to say that 20 years ago. Now we have knowledge to say it. It was an image that cannot be killed. It will be like the Antichrist, and it'll control the population. And it's going to be a robot. And I really believe that. I think Scripture points to that. And I think now with our technology, we can actually definitively say that. So you talk about the end times. I don't know how much closer you can get than that. Let me give you a little bit about war and what's happening. And yes, the war in Israel is continuing to go on. And I want to thank the person that texted me and said that they got more information from Ari in the news than they did from the local media and from worldwide media. It's because we want to get you an up-to-date, vetted image of what's going on in the Middle East. And it's not good. It's not good at all. This is going to be a protracted war. I promise you that. It's not like the 6-day war or a 7-day war or a week war that Israel fought before. Those were skirmishes. This is an outright war. If it expands to a regional war, we're going to be in trouble. Already, Iran has hit over 70 times. Think of this. Over 70 times they've hit American bases in Iran and Iraq and in Saudi Arabia. So I'm not sure what Biden's doing. I know what he's not doing. He's not protecting American interests. But people probably think that he doesn't want to get into war. He's already into war. He's into two of them, very deep, knee deep. And not to protect our servicemen is really bad. But again, it goes hand in hand with what he did in Afghanistan. This one comes out from BusinessInsider.com. Reports that Iran has provided Russia with ammunition, unmanned drones, and other munitions during its war with Ukraine. I told you that last week. They're running out of ammunition. Now Russia plans to send advanced fighter jets and attack helicopters to Iran, greatly increasing the power of that nation's air force. Why would they do that? Because they're anticipating that sooner or later, and I hope we respond to that, sooner or later America's going to get involved in that. This deal will be the first time ever that Iran has purchased new military aircraft since the 1990s. And again, you're talking about Gog and Magog and Persia. All we need now is Tergamra, which is Turkey, and they're already aligned. Bible prophecy states that while the European king of the north is warring in the Middle East in the end times, adversarial news from the east and the north, it says, of Jerusalem will trouble him. That's Daniel 11:40-45. That's up to date with your headlines. Other prophecies describe a coming alliance of Eastern powers. I've told you this before, potentially including portions of Russia, China, and other nations east of the Euphrates River that will control a massive 200 million man militia and initiate a military exchange that will kill a third of mankind. That's Revelation 9. That won't happen, I don't believe, until the tribulation, but it's definitely lining up. Eventually, these eastern forces will cross over a dried up Euphrates River to join with the others at Megiddo before heading to Jerusalem in the final battle of Armageddon. As the geopolitical scene shifts and changes, we need to view these changes through the lens of the Bible prophecy. It's not like these are old prophecies that have never happened and are never going to happen. Yes, they've never happened before. Yes, they're going to happen. And that should tell you something. If they've never happened before and the Bible's predicting them and you're reading some of the lead-ups to these in your headlines, then basically we should understand the Bible is extremely accurate. It should be our guidebook for what's going on, and that's exactly what it is for me. I don't look at it through any other lens. I don't look at it through CNN. I don't even look at it through Fox. I look at it not through news media, but through the Bible. The lens of the Bible is accurate and it's clear, and it's shaping up. Let me give you a little bit more as we go on. This one I call pure prophecy because it says the resurgence of Israel's military is in Bible prophecy. So when we talk about Israel, I can tell you about the headlines. Obviously, you're being hit with them right now. The cycle is kind of low. They're not really telling you a whole bunch about it because it's waned off the cycle. News media should know by now is really mania driven. They want to make sure there's a breaking news, but once that news becomes 2-3 weeks old, they put it in the back burner. Well, the news is still very active in Israel. So let me give you a prophetic summarization of what has happened in Israel right now, what's happening right now, and how it has happened through the years, and what will happen. How is this going to turn out for Israel? I think I'm prepared, based on the Bible and what I've told you, to tell you how this is going to turn out. And so I want you just to understand that I'm going to bring you right through it and show it to you. Israel is the major focus of the end times Bible prophecy, major focus. That's the reason that the reestablishment of the nation in the 20th century was so important. It started the time clock for God. When Israel became a nation on May 15th of 1948, it started the prophetic time clock of the end times. And so we are now living in the end times based on just that. But we also see other things happening. So let's talk about the prophecies of Israel. During the 20th century, we were privileged to witness God beginning to fulfill, in whole or in part, 7 prophecies regarding the Jewish people. Number 1, the regathering of the Jews from the 4 corners of the earth. It's Isaiah chapter 11. There are only about 30,000 Jews in Palestine in 1900. Today, there are over 7 million in the land of land of Israel. Obviously, he's gathered them from the 4 corners of the earth. Number 2, the reestablishment of the state of Israel. Ezekiel 37 tells it'll become a state in one day. It'll become a nation in one day. That was fulfilled in one day. On May 14th, as I said, 1948, when Israel declared independence and was proclaimed in Tel Aviv. By the way, the first state of the United States to recognize Israel as a nation, I think it was 15 minutes after they declared it, was Alabama. Let me give you number 3. The reclamation of the land. Ezekiel chapter 36 talks about taking back the land. When the Jews started returning to the land just over 100 years ago, it was a swamp. It was full of malaria. It was horrible. You couldn't farm anything. Today it's a thriving land. It's a breadbasket of the Middle East, and it produces hundreds of crops that they don't just keep to themselves, but that they export. Number 4, the revival of the Hebrew language. Jeremiah 31:23. You may want to look it up. Hebrew was dead for 1,800 years. For For 1,800 years, they lost ancient Hebrew until a man called Eleazar ben Yehuda started to bring the Hebrew language back. And he was, again, dead for 1,800 years, fulfilling prophecy. Number 5, the reoccupation of the city of Jerusalem. Zechariah chapter 8, verse 4 to 8. The Israelites claimed the city during the Six-Day War on June 7th, 1967. Not when they became independent, but when the Arabs thought that they could surround them and kill them and wipe them off the face of the planet in June 7th, 1967. In the Six-Day War. Well, what happened was during that war, Israel fulfilled Zechariah 8, 4 to 8, and they retook Jerusalem. 6, the resurgence of the Israeli military. Zechariah 12 tells us that. Even though Israel is one of the smallest nations in the world, its military is considered one of the top 5 in the world. 7, the refocusing of world politics on the nation of Israel and its city of Jerusalem. Zechariah tells us that, chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. Today, especially today, world attention is focused on Israel and Jerusalem, as has been abundantly evident in late 2023. So let me tell you about the military power and prophecy. The prophet Ezekiel referred to the revival of Israel in the last days as producing, quote, an exceedingly great military force, and they have. It's Ezekiel 37:10. But how did they do it? Well, the War of Independence, November 1947 to March 1949. We know that despite the overwhelming odds that were forced against them, the infant Jewish nation still prevailed, albeit at an enormous cost. 6,377 Israelis were killed in that war, nearly 1% of the population. That would be equivalent to an American loss today of 3.4 million people. In the end, Israelis controlled not only the territory allotted to them by the UN, but also 60% of the area that had been proposed for an Arab state. The only key area that the Israelis were unable to conquer was the old city of Jerusalem in 1948. Overall, the war represented a miraculous victory for Israel. They won it. In the Six-Day War, June 1967, they won that one. A combined Arab army of 465,000 troops, 2,800 tanks, 800 aircraft were poised to annihilate Israel. They came from all sides. Think about these numbers. 465,000 troops, 2,800 tanks, 800 aircraft came from all sides on that tiny nation of Israel. The Israeli leaders decided it would be suicidal to wait for an attack, and so, on June 6th, the entire Israeli Air Force, except a mere 12 planes assigned to defend Israel's airspace, launched a devastating attack on the Egyptian Air Force. By the end of the morning, they had virtually destroyed the Egyptian, Jordanian, and Syrian air forces. Unchallenged air superiority led to another miraculous victory for Israel after just 6 days of fighting. Then there's the Yom Kippur War of October 1973. They won that one. The holiest day in Jerusalem, by the way, in Judaism. Egypt and Syria launched an all-out surprise attack against Israel. Once again, as in all its previous wars, Israel faced overwhelming odds. On the Golan Heights, 180 Israeli tanks faced an onslaught of 1,400 Syrian tanks. Along the Suez Canal, fewer than 500 Israeli defenders, just 500 soldiers, with only 3 tanks, were attacked by 600,000 Egyptian soldiers, backed by 2,000 tanks and 550 aircraft. Let me read that again, because this is unbelievable. So, the Suez Canal, fewer than 500 Israeli soldiers, only 3 tanks, were attacked by 600,000 Egyptian soldiers, backed by 2,000 tanks and 550 aircraft. 9 non-combatant Arab states provided aid and financial support to the Egyptian-Syrian war effort, while the Soviet Union provided military equipment and intelligence. You're talking about being stacked against you. At great cost, Israel prevailed once again. Israel turned back the initial Arab advances, and they recaptured the Golan Heights and the Sinai Peninsula. Under General Ariel Sharon, Israel won the greatest tank battle in the history of our planet. By October 15th, the Egyptian tank force had been destroyed, the entire force, and Sharon had crossed the Suez Canal. He quickly surrounded the Egyptian Third Army, immobilized it, and started marching towards Cairo. By the way, the only reason he stopped is because of U.S. pressure. Meanwhile, in the north, the Israeli forces had cleared the Golan Heights. They recaptured Mount Hermon, and they began driving towards Damascus. On October 15th, the Israeli forces were 25 miles from Damascus, 63 miles from Cairo, when the Soviets demanded the UN call for a ceasefire. Did you ever heard that before? Once again, Israel prevailed when there seemed to be no hope, but a ceasefire happened. The conclusion? These and other Israeli conflicts over the past 75 years will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that God, only God, has his hand on Israel, protecting the Jewish people from assault after assault after assault, and enabling them to achieve miraculous victories. all in fulfillment of Bible prophecies about Israel in the end times. Nor can there be any doubt that God's supernatural protection will continue, and it will. You can complain about Israel's government. I can. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with God's promises to Israel. Right now, Israel is embroiled in yet another fight for its existence against radicalized Palestinian terrorists in Gaza and Hezbollah. It could well prove to be the worst of all the wars Israel has ever experienced, especially if it blossoms into a regional conflagration. But Scripture tells us that Israel will overcome all these challenges to its existence because God promised that once he replanted them on their land, quote, they will not again be uprooted from their land, Amos 9:15. That's God's promise. No matter what the world does, God has promised that. If this war turns out to be a fulfillment of the prophesied war of Psalms 83, which I've been telling you about, then Israel will once again be overwhelmingly victorious, defeating all the Arab nations with whom it shares a common border. This will pave the way for the subsequent war of Gog and Magog, which will either come before or after the rapture. It's described in Ezekiel 30 and 39, when Russia, accompanied by certain Muslim nations, will come down against Israel and suffer supernatural destruction at the hands of the Lord. Ukraine's not going to destroy Russia. America's not going to destroy Russia. God's going to destroy Russia. Israel has some very difficult days ahead, no doubt. But God has made some wonderful promises to them, and they can rely on them. In Psalm 121:4, he says, behold, he who keeps Israel will not slumber and will not sleep. In Isaiah, he promised Israel, no weapon, we use it as Christians, but it's for Israel. It's for us also, but directly for Israel. No weapon that is formed against you will prosper. That's Isaiah 54:17, given to the nation of Israel. By extension, we take that to us, but initially, the nation of Israel. So America needs to pay attention to these promises of God. Only by standing with and blessing Israel can we hope to be blessed. We are on the precipice of losing our blessings. If we go against Israel, thank God there's still a lot of people in America and in politics, believe it or not, that bless Israel and back them. I think the only saving grace to the Biden administration right now is that he is still backing Israel. Even though he's backing up from it, I pray he doesn't back up enough or too much, because saying that you support their efforts is the only thing that's going to bring blessings to America. Man, I can't give you anything more specific than that. Let's go a little bit further and give you a little bit about the economy. I haven't talked about that in a while. Out of reach, $3.4 million to live the American dream. For a long time, it's been clear that the middle class is being systematically destroyed, and it is. The cost of living has been rising faster than paychecks have for years. And this has pushed millions of Americans into poverty. That's almost an oxymoron, American poverty. Homelessness in the United States is increasing at the fastest rate ever recorded in 2023. At one time, living the American dream was a goal that the vast majority of Americans could aspire to achieve. But now it's way out of reach. In fact, a report that was just released concluded that it now takes $3.4 million for the typical U.S. household to live an American dream over the course of a lifetime. Today, it is only those that are at the very top of the economic food chain that are thriving. Once upon a time, America had the largest and most prosperous middle class in the history of the world. But now the top 1% of Americans control more wealth than the entire middle class. 1% of Americans control more wealth than the entire middle class. 30 years ago, America's celebrated middle class commanded twice as much wealth as the 1%. Over the years, the rich have grown steadily richer, and the poor have gotten poorer. The top 1% caught and passed the middle class in collective wealth in late 2020, FDA data shows. The top 1% of American earners now control more wealth than the nation's entire middle class again. This is what happens when power and wealth are highly centralized. The gap between the wealthy and the rest of us is now bigger than ever. So good luck trying to live a middle class lifestyle in this environment. Do you want to buy a couch? Well, the exact same couch that would have cost you $799 in 2019 will now cost you $1,599. And don't even get me started on the prices of food. Beef is already considered to be a luxury meat, and it's going to be even more expensive in 2024 because the USDA is projecting that beef production is going to be way, way down by 180 million pounds by the end of this year. And we're being warned that supplies of many products in our grocery stores will get tighter as well. That's right, coming back. Factors like environmental challenges, labor shortages, and more could pose a risk to the availability, quantity, and affordability of certain spices, dairy products, eggs, seafood, grains, fresh produce, and meat and poultry. The other day I went to an automotive store with my son. It was about 6 o'clock. The sign said that it closed at 8. There was no one in the store. the employees weren't there. They had closed the store down. I'm not sure if it's from lack of business, lack of product, or what it was, but it's happened several different times, several different stores I've gone to. Of course, there are some things that you won't be able to get at all. Drug shortages in the U.S. have hit a record high, and lawmakers warn they can mean life and death for millions of patients. Health experts agree the shortage of hundreds of generic drugs need urgent attention. If you go to the official FDA drug shortage list, you'll see that there's 143 entries right now. And some drugs that are in short supply are used millions of times a year. Critical shortages in the U.S. include albuterol, an asthma and allergy medication used to prevent and treat breathing difficulty; amoxicillin, antibiotic used to treat bacterial infections, including pneumonia, which is seeing rising cases in the U.S. Epinephrine, or adrenaline, a drug used to treat life-threatening conditions like severe allergic reaction. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were 54 million prescriptions written for amoxicillin in 2019. In 2020, nearly 62 million albuterol prescriptions were handed out. This, my friend, is a crisis. In some cases, the lives of American kids are being put in danger because they can't get the drugs that they desperately need. One teenager lymphoma patient from Indiana was forced to take a type of chemotherapy that had previously led to a life-threatening allergic reaction in him because the medication he had tolerated was out of stock. Another Florida-based mother of a 9-year-old girl with aggressive leukemia was told to expect a 15-month wait for a $10 drug that would save the young girl's life. So why is it happening? Well, I'm going to go off script here and tell you why. Because Americans are greedy. Drug companies are greedy. What they've done is they greedily put their orders for drugs in the hands of China. Instead of investing in American products and building their own companies, they wanted to have cheap labor in China, and they depended on China for all of our drugs. And so our greed is coming back to slap us. It always does. One of the biggest is the fact that we have become so dependent on China and India. Materials from China and India make, you ready for this? 95% of the medicines used in emergency care in the United States. We should have never have allowed this to happen, but we did, and now we're paying a very great price. If you think that shortages are bad now, just wait till China invades Taiwan. Things will get really crazy at that point. And so we're watching some things happen, but again, America, when it runs on its pride and its greed, and I'm talking negative pride, and its greed, it hurts itself. And it always does. The Bible tells you that. Pride comes before a fall. And that greed is always mentioned in the Bible as something that's not beneficial. Let me go a little bit further and tell you a little bit about religion. This one is the spiritual reasons Democrats call Christians a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda. What? Longtime Democratic strategist James Correll made headlines over this past weekend when he accused Speaker of the House Mike Johnson as being a Christian nationalist who posed a bigger threat, I'm quoting, than Al-Qaeda. But Correll's culminations served a deeper purpose. They point out the profound spiritual void that causes liberal politicos to dehumanize faithful Christians for believing in eternal, pre-political morals. Mike Johnson, what he believes is one of the greatest threats we have to the United States, he said, I promise you, I know these people. Correll raged on the overtime segment of Bill Maher's HBO show, which focusingly airs on CNN. You're talking about Christian nationalism, said Maher. This is a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda to this country, asserted Correll. To hear the former Clinton strategist tell us, America stands one election away from becoming the United States of Gilead. Christian nationalists, he averted, control the Speaker of the House. They got probably at least 2 Supreme Court justices, maybe more. He says, don't kid yourself. The founders believed in a Christian moral philosophy, but also put a provision in the Constitution to guarantee that the political leaders would never be able to establish an official church, and they haven't, a national church. Host Bill Maher described the Bible as a book that subscribes to conspiracy theories and homophobic insults. I have my theory about Bill Maher. I don't know anything about his life. I promise you this man is soured on God. I promise you somewhere down the line there's some powerful Christians in his life that he has turned rebellious against. This man has a vendetta with God, Christians, and the Bible. In view of the least 2 members of the panel, anyone who believes in the scriptures is indistinguishable from Osama bin Laden. You hear what they're saying? If you believe in God, you believe in the scriptures, you're just like Osama bin Laden. This is right from Satan's handbook. This comes straight from hell. It's twisted and shameful that a leading Democratic strategist says millions of Christians in America are a greater threat than foreign terrorists who murdered more than 3,000 Americans, replied Johnson. Proving his foresight, Johnson accurately prophesied the Democratic Party should condemn this, but they won't. You know what? I'm not calling it the Democratic Party anymore. Here's what I'm calling it. The Democratic Party. they're full of demons. These are only demons spewing hatred against God's people. In a phrase with chilling biblical echoes, Biden claimed that his political opponents, like Satan, that's you and me, live not in the light of truth, but in the darkness of lies. He wouldn't know light if it sprung on him all over the place. And I really believe he would know Satan. The left has been stoking the comparison of Christians to Islamist terrorists or National Socialists for decades. Democrats are now dehumanizing conservatives, saying they embody the same threat of violence as the masterminds of 9/11. Liberals do this whether in or out of power. In so doing, the left follows one of Saul Alinsky's rules for radical rule. Radical rule number 13, as it turns out, is this, quote, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. History proves the side dehumanizing others never means well, short or long term. This is the precursor to Christian persecution, and it's coming. The inarticulate Joe Biden said it best in his Philadelphia speech. I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. Joe, you think so? We are. I don't even think you know what a soul is, but we are in a battle for it. Left seeks to cancel, then incarcerate its electoral foes. But little has been said of the left's idolatry of power. Without a God to give them solace, they seek their meaning and their purpose in creating a better society through political process. You'll never have that. Without a Christian view of human nature, they believe the government can eventually refashion the human soul into the left's image. That's exactly what Hitler said. It's exactly what Nazism is, and so is fascism. Christians must preach the gospel of the one true and ever-living God upon whose shoulders rests this and every single government. Isaiah says the government is on his shoulders, Isaiah 9:6. Then we will deny the cult of government its next generation of fanatics and swell the ranks of those who worship the one who alone deserves our adoration. Amen. We need to get Christ back in America. We don't need to make America great again. We need to make America Christian again. Here's a study, and I like this study. It's some good news. Teens from conservative families more likely to be mentally healthy. Wow, this is a kick in the teeth to the liberals. Here's a study. Teens from conservative families are more likely to be mentally healthy. A new study reveals that would be a big ho-hum for conservatives, but might be revelatory for others, that teens with conservative parents are likely to be more healthy mentally. It comes from the Institute for Family Studies and Gallup poll, a report authorized by Jonathan Rothwell found. They surveyed 6,643 parents, including 2,956 who lived with an adolescent, and surveyed an additional 1,580 of those adolescents. They asked about mental health, visit to doctors, parenting practices, family relationships, activities, personal traits, attitudes towards marriage, and other topics, including excessive social media use, as discussed in a prior work. They presented the results in a new Institute of Family Studies and Gallup research brief. The findings are extremely clear. The most important factor in the mental health of adolescent children is the quality of the relationship of their caregivers, their parents. It's strongly related to parenting practices, with the best results coming from warm, responsive, and rule-bound, disciplined parenting. That's right, discipline. Spare the rod, spoil the child. We ever hear that before? And parents who think highly of marriage exhibit better parenting practices and have a higher quality relationship with their teens. The report explained, after 10 years of surging adolescent mental health problems and suicide, it's rising constantly. The nation's leading public health authorities have declared an emergency. Unfortunately, the solutions proposed by organizations like the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, such as increasing funding for diagnostic and psychiatric services, do not meet the challenge, and they ignore what are likely to be the most important causes. Adolescent biology hasn't changed. No variation in different economic situations either have changed. Income doesn't buy better parenting. More highly educated parents don't score better either. Parenting style and relationship quality also do not meaningfully vary by race and ethnicity within our U.S. sample, the report said. It noted pointedly that there are some parental characteristics that do have an impact on their teens. Political ideology is one of the strongest predictors. Conservative and very conservative parents are the most likely to adopt the parenting practices associated with adolescent mental health. Of course they are. When you have left-wingers going out and burning down cities and pulling down statues and attacking police, you think their teens are going to grow up to be mentally stable? They're most likely to effectively discipline. These are the conservative parents. They're most likely to effectively discipline their children, while also displaying affection and responding to their needs. Liberal parents score the lowest, even worse than very liberal parents, largely because they are least likely to successfully discipline their children. By contrast, conservative parents enjoy higher quality relationships with their children, characterized by fewer arguments, more warmth, and a stronger bond. And talk about blasting the new age lifestyle out of the water. The report said, other relationships seem to affect the current child-parent relationship. Parents who give high rankings to their relationship with their spouse or romantic partner are also more likely to adopt best practices parenting strategies and enjoy a higher quality relationship with their teens. And there's a difference between authoritative homes and authoritarian. Children raised in authoritative homes are more likely to exhibit self-control, social competence, success in school, compliance with rules, and reasonable social norms, and even exhibit more confidence and creativity. Hundreds of subsequent empirical studies show that depression, anxiety, and behavioral problems are significantly lower when children experience this form of authoritative parenting. That's discipline. And the Bible is not going to lie to you. Again, I told you, is your authoritative rule of faith and conduct, Timothy tells us. You want to know about politics in Israel? Look at the Bible. You want to know about parenting? Look at the Bible. You want to know about success? Look at the Bible. You want to know about gaining wealth? Look at the Bible. You want to know about happiness and joy? Look at the Bible. It has your answers. Let me go a little bit further. This one is why the moral bankruptcy of higher education should not surprise us. So obviously you've seen the news. You've seen the 3 Ivy League presidents come before Congress, and it was a disturbing House hearing last week where heads of 3 American most prestigious universities, Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, equivocated on whether calls for slaughter of the Jewish people are acceptable. They would not deny it. They were allowing it, saying it's a free speech. It's not free speech to threaten people and to put your Jewish students locked in rooms because they're afraid of their lives. If this was happening against blacks or against people who are Spanish or people who are Hispanic or people who are Chinese or Islamic people, they would be up in arms against it. But this by any means necessary, pushing them from the river to the sea and exterminating Jews is being allowed on these campuses. By the way, it's a genocide, and they're allowing genocide and genocidal hate. But they fired the one from McGill, her name is, Liz McGill, Penn's president. You know why they fired her? Because a $100 million donor took back his donation. So they have to be, but look at Harvard. Harvard has a $70 billion trust fund, a $70 billion endowment fund, I should say. $70 billion, yet America still gives it, through taxpayer money, gives it grants. They still charge kids an enormous amount of money to go to college. And they have foreign nations that give tens of millions of dollars, Muslim nations, to these colleges. Why? Because they want to indoctrinate our youth, and they're doing a great job, by the way. So here's my proposal, and it's not the first time anybody's proposed it. Stop funding American colleges that take foreign money. Stop funding them. You want to take foreign money? You don't get any of our money. It's ridiculous. Number 2, they're 501c3s. Tax them. They got enough money. $70 billion in an endowment. Tax them. Why would they not pay taxes? And then Biden's talking about paying for student loans. Take the money out of their endowments. You want to pay those kids to go to college? Take the money out of those massive endowments. So it's just all backwards, of course, just like America, it's backwards. These Ivy League schools get these huge donations, these huge endowments, and then the president has the nerve to say he wants to forgive student loans. That student loans should be student grants from those colleges. And while we might hope that the current state of astonishment and anger on the part of wealthy donors and associated cultural elites will force the accounting of what some of America's most talented youth are learning, don't bet on it. When the president of Harvard founded as a training ground for evangelical pastors, all these Ivy League schools were founded to train pastors. You had to be saved to be on the faculty. You had to be saved to be a student, and you got a ministerial degree. That's what these were for. Can't simply say that when students yell for the destruction of Israel that they've gone too far. Such a belief would not even be an exercise of either faith or hope, but the pathetic fantasy. These institutions are pathetic. If you're thinking of sending your child to a college, think about a trade school. They'll do a whole lot better. Our colleges are re-indoctrinating our kids against any values that you may have. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This one's kind of weird. My wife is part Irish and she loves Irish dancing. And Irish dancing is pretty amazing. It's an art form. But Irish dancing is falling victim to transgender madness. Boy takes girl's place at world's competition. A teenage boy identified as a girl is heading to the Irish Dancing World Championship after placing first in the U14 2023 Southern Region Oireachtas competitions. Parents of girls competing in Irish dance are frustrated and outraged, saying they cannot understand why a boy with physical advantage is allowed to dance against their daughters. Now I'm going to say something. I'm going to go off this because it's a pretty long article. It says the video reviewed by the Daily Signal of the boy winning the U14 girls competition on Sunday. Girls in the background can be seen with jaws dropped, looking at one another when they realize there has been that he's been declared the winner. Let me just say a couple different things. One is Irish dancing has to do with the hips. And girls' hips and boys' hips are different. This boy, by the way, in the boy competition finished 21st. So he switched to the girls' competition so he could win. They wear different clothes, the boys and the girls do. They have different footwear that they do. Their bodies are different. How many people know, I guess, I'm not even sure I have to say this, I guess I do, that there's a difference between men and women. There's a difference between boys and girls. And there is in sports too. And to deny that is just being stupid. It's not even knowing science. It's being stupid. Parents told the Daily Signal they don't understand when or how the leaders of the Irish dancing community made the decision to allow boys to compete as girls. But emails from the Southern Regional District and director shine some light on the process. Director McCaffrey told Irish dance teachers that at the June 30th, 2022 annual convention of the Irish Dance Teachers Association of North America, you need an acronym for it, IDTANA, the members in attendance adopted an inclusivity statement. That word inclusivity is a bad word. It should be right up there with four-letter words. Inclusivity is killing America and the world. You can identify as a giraffe, if that's what you want to do, the former judge said. I believe firmly in live and let live, but it's when someone else's decisions are then affecting a lot of other people that you then have to sit back and decide what needs to happen. And I'm sorry, but girls need to compete against girls and boys need to compete against boys. Let me go a step further. Let me say this. You want to be a transgender boy or girl? Then compete in a transgender sport where only transgenders compete. Is that what fairer than anything else? Then you have your cake and you can eat it too. So, the powers that be within the Irish dance are more interested in being politically correct than preserving both the dignity of Irish dance and its dancers. Let me give you this one, not surprisingly. Young people, it's a poll, are open to banning the Bible as part of hate speech. Scripture repeatedly informs us that we will be hated, rejected, and persecuted for our faith. So we should be surprised. Following Jesus means to counter all of man's natural desires, making both controversial and offensive to the unconverted. And the Bible, authoritative and eternal, does not change with the times. Of course, our times are moving further and further away from biblical mandates. So you can expect the pushback to intensify and become more common, especially these last days. The world doesn't necessarily hate you, it hates Jesus, and it hates the truth that you represent and proclaim. So a recent poll conducted by Whitestone Insights asked 2,880 UK adults if they agree with this statement. Unless the offending parts can be edited out, books containing what some perceive as hate speech should be banned from general sale, including, if necessary, religious texts such as the Bible. Well, the results showed a substantial amount of Brits agreed with that statement. Most clearly seen among LGBT and abortion activists, modern secular morality demands the church needs to change, lest it be canceled. Cancel me anytime you want. I am not changing from the word. I don't care if you cancel anything I am. You can cancel that I'm being a person. I am not going to change from the word. Really, though, through the eyes of a worldly mindset, the true Bible will always be a threat. Always. Yet even when the world tries to tamper with or ban it altogether, the true biblical message is always going to prevail. The Bible says the gates of hell will not prevail against God's word. Neither will cross-dressing transvestites. Whether it challenges from outside the church or from inside, we're called to stand firm. 1 Peter 4:12 says, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. Rather, we are to rejoice as we share in Christ's sufferings. He says, if you are insulted for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of God and the glory of God rests upon you. So you want to insult me? All you're doing is blessing me. So bring the blessings on. That's in the news for tonight. I'm going to go.